Knights at the Round Table, a round table discussion on speculative fiction books and film. Hi everybody and welcome to the next episode of Knights at the Round Table. Today we are discussing the 1988 Miyazaki My Neighbor Totoro. I'm sitting at the table with Michael and with Nathan, and I'd like to start with general impressions of the film. Mike, you get to go first.
It's amazing. It's brilliant. It's one of the greatest animated movies ever made, and it's probably his. I'd say it might be his best film. I mean, it's simple, but it's sweet, but that's really its strength. So I love it. Yeah.
I'm not sure it's quite his best film because Spirited Away, but it's definitely up there. It's one of my favorite movies. It's one of my kids' favorite movies. We watch it constantly at home because my 5-year-old can't get enough of it. And yeah, it's just wonderful.
This was the first time I've ever watched My Neighbor Totoro. And by the first time I've ever watched My Neighbor Totoro, I mean yesterday afternoon in the evening. And I was not prepared for the ending. It felt a little abrupt. But also, I think that's part of where the sweetness comes from, because this movie really is literally just a small slice of life of this family. And it doesn't really have closure in the way that we're used to movies having, so that was an adjustment for me. I'm not saying it's good or bad. It was just an adjustment for me. Because the only other movie that did that to me was, like, Monty Python and the Holy Grail, and when that movie ended, I was like, what? And then this movie ended, and I'm like, okay, I guess.
But I would just say, if I may, the film doesn't have a plot. There's no plot to the film, and so it doesn't start completely arbitrarily. It starts with them moving out to the country, but then, like you said, it's just this slice of life, and there's, it could end anywhere. It could have ended before May ran away. It could have ended when the mom came home from the hospital, I guess, but it's just, it just had to end somewhere, so it just ends there. I mean, it's a plotless movie, and so there's not really, it's hard to have an abrupt ending when it's just like, and then I guess this will happen, and now this will happen, and everything, which is not a criticism of the movie at all. I love it. I love how you just go along with the flow of the film.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think literally anywhere they could have ended it would have been abrupt, except for maybe the mom coming home, which she does in the credits. Yeah, and I think they have another kid, too, and stuff like that. A lot of story in the credits.
It's not a movie about, story. It's a movie about feelings.
Yeah.
And it ends right after the biggest feelings that you have.
Yeah. That's a really good way to put it.
That is a really good way to put it. Yeah.
I will say, just picking up on what you said, I have a 3.5-year-old daughter, and probably about a year ago when she was 2, she had already seen all the big Disney films that I felt like showing her at that point, and all the Pixar films, and I had some Miyazaki as well, and I thought, okay, well, Totoro seems like a really good movie to show her, and she adores the movie too, and she loves it so much, and I think there's something about the plotlessness and about just kind of living with these characters, and these two girls who, for my money, one of the reasons I think it's one of the greatest animated films of all time and greatest film is, and as a father of now 2 daughters, I don't think I've ever seen children depicted so accurately on screen. They feel like real kids. Even a live action film with good actors, I don't think it's ever felt so real. They just act and speak and feel just like I see my daughter acting and feeling and talking, and it's just so perfect. And I think that's part of what she really responds to. I think she looks at these characters on screen, and more than any other characters in any other films I've shown her, I think she kind of relates to them, and there's no plot to keep track of. There's no questions of what's happening. It's just it's unfolding, it's washing over her, and she adores it. I watched it this morning before leaving the house. I watched it yesterday, and that's not for this video. That's just how often we watch it. It's always in the rotation.
I literally told my wife the same thing yesterday about the children really looking like children. I have a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old, and these kids really behave like kids. And not in they're not adults. No, they especially Satsuki, the oldest one, she really tries to be an adult. But she's a child.
Yeah.
And then you really, the little kid really reminds me, May really reminds me of my youngest son. We always say that it's the Xavier movie because Xavier is in the movie.
Well, when the dad's working And
she's bringing the flowers.
Yeah, she brings the flowers. You'll be the flower shop, and then goes
she
back.
just
and
goes
like,
back.
Yeah,
and
then
never comes
sometimes,
back.
like my daughter does that. Or like, just can we have lunch now? We just had breakfast. Oh, okay. Like no concept of time, and just or like when they first get to the house and they're just like literally just running around and rolling around in the field and everything in the yard, and then they find the rotting piece of wood holding up the trellis or whatever, and then they just start hitting it and everything, and then they're on to the next thing, like everything. And like when I first saw this movie, close to 20 years ago, in university, I was like, okay, it's beautifully made and everything, and it's interesting, slice of like Japanese culture and stuff, and I'm sure we'll talk about that. But it wasn't until I showed it to my daughter and watched it through her eyes, but also through the eyes of like a parent now, that's when it just clicked into me. Like that when I started watching it again like a year ago, it was just like, oh my god, this movie is an absolute masterpiece. Like
yes.
it hits me so hard now.
I do love those. I don't have kids, so I can't relate on that level. But I do love the relationship between the sisters. They're so sweet.
Mm-hmm.
Though I do have to say, I have never been that excited about moving house. Ever in my life.
I have.
Really?
My parents used to flip houses, and moving was really...
Oh, really?
We moved every 2 years or so.
Well, we moved every 2 years too, but that was because Dad was just born a bed.
Oh, yeah. No, for us it was just like, it was exciting. We were done making this house pretty, and now we were gonna do it all over again to a new house, and like, I don't know.
So that excites me now. If I had the money, that's exactly what I would be doing.
So I should have looked this up, but I thinking back to the film studies class where I originally watched this, where they had a kind of mini unit on Miyazaki. Some of the context I remember the professor giving it was this was like Japan right after the war, right after the bombs had been dropped, and certain people in certain areas of Japan were moving out to more rural areas to get away from some of the devastation of the war and stuff like that. And I kind of had that in the back of my mind when I first rewatched it, like with my daughter.
I did not know.
And I'm watching it, and I'm like, I don't get any of that. Like I don't see any of it. And like it's like, okay, maybe like if you look at like kind of the time period it seems to be set in, maybe that makes sense. But like I don't think it's important to it at all. Mm-hmm. And also I don't see any of that in this movie. I mean, there's a certain like urban versus rural kind of idea.
Do you know why
but
people
like,
got that though?
Yeah.
Because it was the first time Totoro was ever shown. It was shown as a double bill with Grave of the Fireflies.
Oh, okay.
So there's a lot
context,
of parallels that were drawn between the two.
Okay.
I remember reading an article thinking, speaking of parallels, how a lot of viewers thought that Totoro was secretly like a god of death analogy, which was shot down by the filmmaker himself.
Right.
But yeah, I read the title and I'm like, wait, what? Of that particular article, and then I went through and I read it, and I'm like, I kind of get what you're going for, but no.
Mm.
But I mean, they're you can interpret a lot from it if you want, because it is so open and it is so kind of free flowing and everything like that, and you can read it just at the surface level. Like you can imagine, like, yeah, Totoro is a real thing. Like even in typically I watch the English dub version. There's a really good one. Apparently the original one wasn't very good, but the one they have now with the Fanning sisters, like Dakota and Elle Fanning playing the sisters, like that just adds another level, and that's fantastic. Mm-hmm. And yeah, the dub is excellent, because I've watched it with the subtitles and I've watched it with the dub, and like I'm very comfortable watching it just with the dub. But like you can read it just as like at the end of the credits, the song like Totoro, Totoro. You only see him when you're very young, and that's part of the song. So you can read it as surface level, like Totoro exists, all these little trolls or gnomes or whatever. Mm-hmm. They're actually real, but you can only see them when you're a kid and they're actually experiencing it. Or you can imagine they're just having like they're imagining, and these are imaginary friends and everything. You can see it that way, or you could see it as like read it as a deeper mythology. And honestly, I don't think it makes any difference whatsoever to your enjoyment of the film. Like, you can enjoy it on any level. If you want to see it as some kind of like death, whatever. If that's how you want to read the film, fine. I don't think it's going to change your enjoyment.
That's part of the beauty of art, right? Is you can interpret it any way you wish. But I liked that the whole Totoro, you can only see him when you're very young. It's kind of analogous to the world of fairies that I grew up with a grandmother whose sort of ancestry is Cornish. So you got a lot of there are fairies, but you can only see them if you're very young and only if you're very good. So we would spend a lot of time in the backyard building little mud huts for the fairies. And
So in the original Japanese version, there is actually a kind of a wordplay between Totoro and troll.
Yeah.
Where
They say troll in the dub.
They do say troll.
Yeah.
But it doesn't make sense because it doesn't make as much sense as like the Japanese sub because they really sound alike in Japanese, and like Satsuki is interpreting Mei as having tried to say troll because of like the way that she says Totoro, and you see at the end their mother's reading them a book about like a goat going over like a bridge with a troll in it, and it's actually the story that Satsuki's referring to when she's like, oh yeah, that story that mom used to read like with the trolls. So you know, if there's interpretation of mythology.
I like that, like what you specifically just said with relating it to the mom, because that makes the whole Totoro thing, whether it's a real, being visited by this real troll thing, or whether that's what they're imagining or something like that, either way it kind of links back to the mom, because clearly that's what's on their mind, and clearly that's what they're thinking about. Like, my wife, who also... really enjoys the movie and everything, and is experiencing it differently as a parent. Like, she experienced it on a whole other level too because of the mom, and I remember when we rewatched it for the first time with my daughter. My wife hadn't seen it in a really long time, and she couldn't remember the mother plot line, and she was like, she just became convinced that the mom was going to die, and just started bawling. Bawling like, oh no, the mom's not gonna make it. It's awful. Oh no, they need their mother, and just like, oh my god, it was so funny. And now we watched it like 100 times in the past year, and like we know what's gonna happen, but just like at the first time, she's just like, oh no.
That was literally me for the whole movie, which is why I think that the ending felt so weird to me, because I had an expectation of something happening to me.
It's much more fun the second time.
Yeah.
No one dies.
Everything's okay.
No one dies, but you know what? Every single time they think the little girl is lost, and that scene with the sandal.
With the sandal.
I cry every time. I've watched the movie 200 times, and I still cry every time.
It's not that kind of movie, right, guys? Right? It's not that kind of movie.
I did not cry, but I did do one of these.
Yeah. But even that, like, just in terms of, like, kids, like, reality of kids, like, that look that Mei gets on her face when she's just, like, not listening and determined to do what she wants to. Like, even, like, when they find the upstairs and Satsuki goes downstairs and Mei stays up because she wants to catch a dust sprite, and she just had... it followed Satsuki downstairs, and then it goes back up to Mei, and she just has that determined look on her face, and it's the same look she has when she's holding onto that corn. She's not letting go of that corn. She's going to bring it to her mom, and, like, I see that look on my daughter's faces all the time. Even my, like, 1-year-old now, it's just like, no, this is what's happening now.
Yes.
And it's so amazing just how he's captured that in this, like, pen and pencil animated form. Like, it's fantastic.
I agree. I want to give a shout out to a portrayal of a competent father.
Yeah.
Likeable, competent, and doesn't shoot them down.
And he's... Honestly, I was so happy to see him on screen. I'm like, yes, finally.
Well, that's what, like, and that actually, doesn't shoot them down. That was going to lead into the other point I wanted to make, which I kind of read as more of like a Japanese culture type of thing, but you might be right. It might just be more of a, like, competent game father type of thing. Just the fact that, like, he's interested in the whole ghost thing. Like, oh, I always wanted to live in a haunted house, and here, let's laugh and try to scare them away and everything like that. Or, oh, so you saw Totoro. Well, okay, it must be the spirit of this forest in the tree. Let's go to the shrine and let's thank them for letting us be here and everything, and just, like, playing along. Like,
feeding their imagination instead of stifling it. It was beautiful.
But,
I loved it.
But that's just it, like...
turning their fear into pleasure.
Yeah. But, so you read that as, like, competent father. I always read that as just, like, my impression is that in Japanese culture they're a lot more open to certain concepts that we would consider, like, supernatural and that kind of thing. Like, I think it's just a bit more commonplace, like the idea of, like, a haunted house and things like that, I think is just more baked into their culture a lot more. So I think I think just in general they'd be more
Yeah, I
open
think
to that
so,
kind
like
of
the idea of
yeah.
sharing the world with spirits is
Yeah.
very much still
Right.
part of modern Japanese. It used to be part of ours. It's very much still part of
Right.
modern Japanese.
So that's how I kind of read it. It's just
Yeah.
like, you know,
It's
if
just
it,
I'm
yeah.
so used to seeing parents, fathers in particular, who are absolutely useless pieces of dirt,
Mhm.
might as well not exist in their children's lives other than some sort of like disciplinary antagonist sort of figure.
And honestly, he has it kind of rough. You know, his wife's in the hospital.
Yeah.
He's just moving to a new home with his
Yeah.
2 girls.
Teaching full time at the university.
Yeah.
Way far
Out of
into the
this-
city.
yeah.
You know, like he could have been portrayed as an incompetent father, and we would have understood.
Mhm.
Yeah. Or
But
at least, you know, sort of bitter and
yeah,
that kind of thing. But he
Yeah.
wasn't. He was
No.
a lovely human being, and it was really nice to see that in a
Yeah.
parental figure, particularly in a father figure.
Mhm.
He certainly wasn't Mr. Mom or anything
No,
like that. Like,
exactly.
oh dear, how do I make a lunch? How do I do this? You know? He's not the kind of dad who, if he ever had to watch the kids himself, he would say, I'm babysitting. He's not
Yeah.
that kind of dad.
Yeah.
He's the kind of dad saying, I'm parenting because I'm a parent.
Yeah.
But also like the, what are they, it's Granny, right? They call
Nanny?
her Granny. Or
Nanny.
yeah.
Nanny, Granny?
Oh,
Okay.
They
Nanny
call her
in my
Granny in
dub.
the dub.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, it was Nanny in my
Okay.
Yeah, same diff.
Different, yeah. But I like that. I like, you know, I like even just like when she first turns around and for some reason Miyazaki old people always have like the wart in the forehead,
the
right?
one,
Like that's just
like the one mole or something.
that's how
Yeah.
you know. That's how you know that they're old. But like you know, she seems kind of freaky. And in the dub I watched, she's voiced. Its name's escaping me, but the same woman who voiced Ursula and
Yeah.
Oh,
Little
really?
Mermaid. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so like you would think like, oh, she seems creepy and she seems scary, and they're a little startled when they first see her, but she's warm
the
and she's
sweetest.
lovely and sweet, and she looks after them, and they love her, and it just reminds me of the relationship my daughters have with our daycare provider, and who they call Grammy, and they call her Granny in the movie, which probably helps with my daughter's enjoyment of it. It's like she understands exactly who that character is.
Yeah.
And that's just, it's just wonderful.
There's
you
a
know?
real sense of community
Yeah.
in that movie. You know, down to the like, oh well, go use the phone at this person's house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, like everybody, and of course she's gonna let them use the phone,
Yeah.
and of course Granny's gonna look after the kids. While
And
the
everyone
father's
comes
gone.
together to look for May when
Exactly.
she's missing. And
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Sandal.
Oh my god!
Sorry.
That scene, the gravity of that scene, the trembling hands and everything. Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
Oh, it's just, it's
in the
fantastic.
dub, her voice trembles
Yeah.
perfectly with
Yeah.
it.
And yeah, so and I'm also coming to this like not just with like you know Western culture all up in my head and everything, but also like just you know Japanese anime in general has never like just the aesthetic has never been something I've really responded to that much or been that interested in, except for Miyazaki. Like he is, you know, and
Landscapes, though, are stunning.
it's just
He's
it's
in a
just a
league of his
whole
own.
yeah, it's a whole other level above. And like when I was a kid or when I was a teenager or something, I was exposed to a lot of it. Like some of my friends were into it, and I never really connected. And then I got into Miyazaki because of this this one mini unit in this film studies course. But then that almost spoiled it for me. It was like,
Yeah.
oh, it can be really good, but it can never really be as good as this. So you know, again, it's just like it's I have this difficult relationship with anime because you know, and I know it's just like it's like any other animation art form. You know, there's good stuff and there's bad stuff, and I know that logically, but I've never really connected to anything except for the Miyazaki films, and this film in particular has become so important to me because of how my daughter reacts to it, and my other daughter will probably react to it even more. And as they grow up a little bit more, and I have 2 daughters, so they're going to be 2 sisters, it's just going to be like, this movie is going to be one of the most important movies in my life, I think. I'll probably watch it when they're all grown up and like remember how they were when they were young.
Oh,
you
yeah,
know?
for sure.
That'll add this whole other layer to it. Like, this movie's going to be with me my entire life.
Yeah.
I know it is, which is why it's like it's just incredible.
Yeah, I agree about like the art stuff. Miyazaki definitely has something that is over and above, something quite special in his animations. Like, I don't know what it is, but every time I see a landscape I'm like, that is just beautiful.
Oh, it's
So
gorgeous. It's gorgeous. The animation is just out of this world.
Yeah.
When they turn on the light, so pretty.
Yeah.
The street lamp turning on. Oh,
Oh, that's that iconic rain scene is just
yeah.
gorgeous.
Oh my
It's
God.
my Google theme.
Is it? Totoro, like, getting ASMR reactions from the falling raindrops was
But
just...
that's the cover of the Blu-ray DVD that
Yeah,
I have.
yeah.
It's them with the umbrella.
DVDs are back there.
Yeah, we
Oh,
forgot to
Oh,
put
I
them
forgot
in.
to put them on display.
Oh yeah, same
That's
DVD.
my fault.
But anyway, yeah, like it's just it's so gorgeous, and and that all goes back to like the landscapes are gorgeous, but also the character animation, which is why they read so much like real people, like just every little movement and every little facial twitch, or even like when I remember a year ago when I kind of reintroduced myself to it, just when they're running around the house barefoot, and just the slightest like one or two frames when their foot is up and you can just see they're a little bit dirty, you know, and like. And it's just like little touches like that just feel so make it feel so lived in and so real, and yeah, it's just gorgeous. It's just fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh.
I agree. I just thought the movie is wholesome. The
It is.
family is wholesome. The
Yeah.
community is wholesome. Totoro is wholesome.
Well, I remember I looked into it a little bit when I watched it, and I saw comparisons to Japanese culture. Between Totoro and like a Mickey Mouse, right? Like just how prevalent it is, and like I guess in Japanese culture, like Totoro and Hello Kitty and that kind of stuff, you just see it everywhere.
It's prevalent even in North America.
In our culture too as well.
You know, you see, I was just watching an episode of Bob's Burgers the other day, and they're doing like the grow dance with the vegetables and everything. Like I think it's a Thanksgiving episode or something, and you know, like it's just there, and you can visibly recognize it.
Yeah. But but what's interesting is like I think it's so much more recent, right? It's 32 years ago, whereas like so much of our animation touchstones, like Disney or whatnot, might come from way earlier. But this one's more recent, and I think people are growing up with it. Like I wish I had watched it when I was a kid. Like I was born 3 years before it came out, so around the time the first dub version might have come to North America, I might have been in a perfect age to watch it, but I didn't. But my kids are going to grow up watching it, and I think a lot of kids are going to grow up watching it, and you'll start seeing it pop up more and more places, because it will become a part of our common experience, like some of the classic Disney animated films. Like it's just going to be one of those kids' films, and like my sister has 2 daughters, and I don't think she's watched it yet, but I've told her I'm going to lend it to her, and you know, and people will share it, and I think it's going to be a treasured thing.
I mean, it pretty much already is.
Yeah.
People flipped out when they found out that I hadn't watched it.
In Toy Story 3, there's a Totoro in the background of one of the scenes.
Oh, is there?
I noticed that,
Aw,
yeah.
that's
Nice.
cute.
Yeah. Well, it's so big and fluffy, and
I know.
I have
Fluffy, I'm gonna die.
I have definitely been Totoro to my daughter a couple times.
Yeah, me too.
And I really enjoy it because it means I can lie down, and she's just.
I know, right?
I
It's the
just
best.
do that. Yeah, it's easy. It's an easy game to play. I like it. And then I'll fall back asleep. And no, Totoro, wake up! Just a few-
Facebook keeps
few seconds
periodically
longer.
showing me an ad for like a queen size bed that is basically a giant Totoro plushie. Yeah. Oh, she wants it. I want it too.
Yeah.
I'm an adult.
You can do what I want.
I can do what I want.
We had a friend who was just in Japan in December, and they brought back a cat bus little plushie for my daughter,
Oh my
and it
God.
has 4 Totoros inside of it that you can like take out, and on the front in Japanese, like I would never get this, but my wife speaks and reads a little bit of Japanese, and it says May on the front.
Oh, nice.
It's like it's on its way to find May. It's great.
Cute.
Yeah, and so we watched when we watched Totoro for the first time since my daughter got the cat bus, when the cat bus first appeared, just the shrieks of like, cat bus, cat bus, cat bus, where is it, where's my cat bus toy? Like she was so excited. Like somehow she likes it even more now. I didn't think it was possible.
That cat bus is ridiculously sweet.
Oh my God. And when she gets in and it's all like fur and
squishy
soft
and
like,
soft.
oh my God, yeah.
Oh man, yeah. So fantastic film.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. So that star rating then for you.
Let
me guess.
5 stars, and probably will increase as I get older.
Ask in 2 years' time, 7 out of 5.
Yeah. It's a solid 5 stars for me too. Yeah.
It's not my favorite Miyazaki, so it's getting 4 for me. But I still really enjoyed it. The sort of non-ending ending notwithstanding.
I'm actually hard-pressed to think of a Miyazaki movie that would get significantly less than 5 stars for me.
Yeah.
It's difficult to come up with.
We'll talk.
Oh yeah, next panel. I can't wait for that.
You
Okay,
can,
you get to pick the next movie.
be a gallery. We'll talk. You can see a little bit of the influence that Japanese culture has had
Is it
from
another
Anne of
Miyazaki?
Green Gables.
And Green Gables?
It has this obvious references back and forth between the two of them.
Oh,
The pastoral landscape, the
Mm.
small communities.
Mm.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure, that's
Carry
good.
on.
I was just in PI.
What's the movie?
A little scene classic, Frozen from 2013.
Never heard of it.
I think there's some dolls right back there. Are they in frame?
I wonder whose suggestion that was.
Also, one of my daughter's favorites. When
All
she
right.
was like 1, she was singing "Let It Go." And
My
Oh.
boys refuse to watch it.
oh, how come they're missing out?
They're at that age where it's like a girl's thing.
I roll.
I've been really trying to break that, but you know.
What can you do? Alright, so the next movie, or one of the next movies in our next live stream we'll be discussing is Frozen, the 2013 animated film. If you have any thoughts about My Neighbor Totoro, leave them down in the comments below.
Totoro, Totoro, Totoro.
And I will be looking probably, so I may or may not reply depending on how I'm feeling. Thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you soon. Bye!